work. So it's pretty self-explanatory. You can do this in a lot of different positions. I'm going to show you my favorite positions to do it in. So specifically with the suboccipitals, you need to be able to get right up against the base of the skull and move your hair out of the way. So you do this a couple of different ways. We talked about kind of parallel rolling, perpendicular, strumming. I like to do either a parallel with somebody that's really irritable, the suboccipital, somebody that's getting a lot of those headaches. If somebody's a little less irritable, I like to do a sustained pressure technique. You can do that a couple of different ways. So I can either take my fingers, the pads of my middle and third fingers, and I'll lift her head and get right up against that occipital, right where a lot of those things are attaching. And then I'm just going to flex my fingers, give a little bit of pressure, and I'm kind of hooking up underneath the base of her skull and giving a little bit of distraction as well. And the only problem with this one is that your fingers are going to get tired pretty quick. Some folks are going to need this, especially if you're combining it with some traction. You may do this for 5, 6, 10 minutes. Your fingers are going to get tired doing that. So you can also take kind of the edge of your forearm here, get your radius, put it right up underneath in that same spot, and it fits perfectly right underneath the base of the skull. And now I can stabilize her forehead here, and all I've got to do is pronate my forearm, right? And because it's hooked right there, now I'm getting a little bit of pressure there on the suboccipital, and I'm getting a really nice traction in her cervical spine as well. And I can sit there and hold this as long as I want to. I can even do a little oscillation with it. I don't know if you can see, but just kind of pronating and supinating my forearm. I can sit there and hold that as long as I need to. Obviously, you can also just do your parallel strumming. You can do that work down to the upper trap. Moving into the upper trap, we talked about also. I like to do that too in this position, especially if you've got somebody that's really irritable. I feel like I can really get down into it and kind of get some good, just kind of rolling motion. If I found a gristly spot, I can sit there on it a little bit. I can also incorporate some stretching into that, so that I find a good trigger point there in the upper trap or the levator. I can use the other hand to kind of passively stretch her through a range of motion. I can get her to do some active assisted range of motion just to try to release that trigger point. But you can play with it depending on what the person likes. You can do this in a seated position, anything, any